Welcome back to the SuperCaZt. I'm your host, the Super Foch, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt, and I'm joined, as always, by my buddy and co-host,
Steve Z, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt.
And I hope everybody's doing great out there. It's been pretty interesting the last few weeks. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. I mean, getting ready, I guess whenever this comes out, it'll be the start of a new weekend. And pretty excited because we haven't done one of these in a bit.
We have not.
If you're not familiar with this is SuperCaZt Extras, the special show we do from time to time where we talk about just, I guess, a hodgepodge of topics that we've just been stewing over and want to get our 2 cents out there. So it's a little more laid back, a little more just off the cuff, just rambling. So if that's your speed, then thank you for tuning in.
And joining, yes, definitely. Before we get started, you want to remind everybody we do have our regular show, which is usually on Spotify. We upload to Spotify, but you can also catch our episodes on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com, search SuperCaZt with a Z, and you can go to Twitter at SuperCaZt with a Z. Follow us, become our friend, and just give us your opinion on what we talk about today, because we are going to have a little bit of a hot button subject, and I'm really curious to see how what response we get out of this, because we're going to start out pretty crazy, aren't we, man? And that is, okay, so first of all, let's just lay it down here. Our show is not about bashing stuff. We're not about, trying to be negative all the time. But we're humans like the rest of you, so we have our opinions, and we do have some things that we do care about that we feel like could be done a little bit better. And
we're honest. That's the big thing.
Right, exactly. Now, if you disagree with us and you like everything or dislike if we like it, hey, more power to you. No problem at all. But like Steve said, we've just been thinking about this, and I especially have, because I finally sat down and watched the last 2 movies of the current Star Wars trilogy. So you have the originals, you have your prequels, and you have these. And how do you want to get started with this? Because I don't want to come out guns blazing. Okay. Because let's remind everybody out there, we are huge Star Wars fans. Have been our entire lives. We're in our mid-30s now, so we've seen the good and bad and the ugly of Star Wars, haven't we?
Definitely. I guess that's where we should start off. Is let's talk about the good.
Yes.
Just so we can establish our credentials. Right. You can see where we're coming from.
Right.
So original trilogy. Mm-hmm. I watched it to death. I got it on VHS way back in the day. And some of the first movies I actually remember owning that were mine. That I put my name on them. I don't know why I did that.
Just because you could.
Just remember it was awesome.
Yeah.
They had the original covers, the posters from the original films, and I just loved those. I watched them to death. Sometimes I would just have marathons on Sunday afternoons. I'd put in the first one, I'd watch all 3 in the same day.
And
so
same here.
I was diehard.
I remember, I think it was Easter. For some reason, Easter comes to mind when they re-released them on those special covers with Yoda was on one cover, I think. Darth Vader was on one of them, and then who was the other one?
Was it not an Ewok? It was
no.
Stormtrooper?
Might have been. I don't remember. Sure. But anyway, those were the first covers I remember. And what I really remember about those versions is they had an interview with Leonard Maltin and George Lucas at the start of each movie. And I'm like 8, 9 years old, 10, 11, I don't remember. And I loved that part. I loved hearing George Lucas talk about each movie because, I don't know, I just enjoyed that part and how everything, came to be. And the making of the original trilogy is actually pretty crazy when you go back and look at it. So do yourself a favor. There is a special on YouTube that talks about it. And I mean, he basically wanted to make this independent film and then just basically have a studio release it.
Yeah, it just became one of the most successful franchises in history.
And so, shortly before the prequels were to come out, they re-released the originals, and that's where we got our first copies. And again, just huge fans. And I remember when the prequels came out, I mean, everybody was excited. It was new Star Wars and everything like that. And so what was your initial thoughts on the prequels, man?
I remember liking them. I didn't love them like I did the originals.
Yeah.
I remember The Phantom Menace, I gave it the most because it had the most hype. I was the most excited for it. It had all the toys and stuff and the Happy Meals. And I remember I liked a lot of elements of it. I was one of those people that gave it a lot more shot than other people.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, Jar Jar Binks at the time as a little kid didn't like deter me from liking the whole film.
Right.
Nowadays, I can see that it is a bit slower. That it's a lot of it, like half the movie's just talking about Senate politics and things like that. But I still think the prequels are okay. I remember the second one when it came out. I watched it pretty fast. And the third one, The Revenge of the Sith, I remember that was the one that came out, I think, my freshman year in college. And me and a lot of people went and saw that. And there was a lot of hype for that one. So I liked those. I didn't like them as much as the originals. I didn't think the filmmaking was as good.
Right.
I think the big thing that always detracted me from liking those was sort of the way the effects blended with the environments. It just looked fake when I compared it to the originals. The originals,
right.
Yes, it's mostly matte paintings and sets and puppets and things like that. A little early CG, but the second when they went all in, they were just like, let's do it on a green screen. And the green screen of early 2000s, it doesn't look that good. And you could tell these people were not in the actual places they're supposed to be in. And that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the first movie was pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of politics and a lot of stuff that flew over my head at that point. The second one I remember coming out, but I don't remember as much hype about that one for some reason. And then the third one obviously had a lot of hype going in it with the showdown between Vader and Obi-Wan. Of course, now we've had a few of those, and but like you, man, for the most part, they were okay. They
were okay. I think the big thing about those is how they're going to end.
Right.
So you're just waiting for it to get to that. So it's kind of like there's no suspense. There's nothing. There's no mystery. You're just like, okay, so this is how Anakin's going to become Darth Vader.
And I think that's one of my biggest problems, not to jump ship a little bit, but I think one of my biggest problems with the show, like Obi-Wan, it's like, we know what happens to Obi-Wan. We already know that. Why do we have to have a whole show about it, I mean, can't some of it be a little bit, use your imagination? Do we have to have everything spelled out for us, Because what are your thoughts on that? I know I just jumped the subject, but,
It kind of gets into the next thing because in 2013, 14 or something like that, George Lucas sold his stake in Star Wars to Disney. And at the time, everybody's freaking out. A lot of people were. All my students were. And I was just like, well, I mean, they can't be worse than the prequels. That was what I said.
Right.
They're like, what, the prequels are awesome.
Yeah.
Because they grew up with those. But yeah, I think Disney is really oversaturated their Star Wars.
I agree.
Star Wars used to be an event thing. It used to be like they come out every 3 or 4 years or so. Or for us, they don't come out for 20 years and they all of a sudden come out with another one. So I think that's the big thing. And Obi-Wan, I haven't given it a shot. I watched a little of The Mandalorian. It's just, I don't know. To me, it's just too much of a fandom thing. It's like they're making it for fans. They're not trying to really make a great product, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's just, and I saw a little bit of the Obi-Wan show, and the ending with Darth Vader, I mean, you can't help but get caught up in it, because again, with us knowing these characters for pretty much our entire life, there is a little bit of that nostalgia factor and, what it was, but I just wonder, are we milking the cow for too much, so to speak, and I don't know.
Yeah. And I think they've kind of realized that. They've transitioned more to television because they were making all those Star Wars stories, they're forbidden.
Right.
And they only made 2 of those because the Solo one, everybody was like, nobody cared when it came out. But let's move on to the real topic that you want to get into, and that is the sequel trilogy is what they call it now.
So, and completely run by Disney, completely made by Disney. And it's where to start?
I guess I would start with The Force Awakens.
Okay, so The Force Awakens, I was legit excited about. I was in Birmingham at that point, and I was legit excited about this. I mean, we had not been oversaturated with Disney Star Wars stuff by then, so, you know, you hear about a new Star Wars movie, you're like, okay, who's this new Rey girl? Is she going to be kin to, Anakin? Is she going to be, who's this? And there was just a lot of potential, especially when they brought back, Harrison Ford. So I was really excited about this first movie. What about you going into it? What was your expectations? Did you have any, or what? How'd you feel?
I think it was just like an event movie. Everybody wanted to go see it.
Yeah.
That's why it made a killing.
Yeah.
And everybody comes out of the theater like, it's awesome. And that's why I was like, I gotta go see it. So I remember you and me and my wife went and watched it at an IMAX theater. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty cool. It was a good experience. And I left feeling like I liked parts of that movie. But at the same time, I didn't just love it. And it's really after the movie settled on me for a little bit, did it start to sour on me. Just because I was like, wasn't that just A New Hope we just watched? With different characters and not as likable characters, in my opinion. I mean, I tried to give the new trilogy characters something, but I don't know, they're just very vanilla, in my opinion.
That's the thing, and I don't know if it's because they were just trying to do the same thing or what it was, but it just felt so, like, I did not feel for Rey, I think, what they wanted me to feel, and that's, something. I just didn't feel for the character like I did, Luke or any of the other from the original. So that was a concern of mine. But it's like, it's the first movie. Whatever. Well, the second one's always the best. I mean, Empire was better than, A New Hope, a lot of people say, and I'm kind of on that bandwagon. But then the new one, the second one came out, and people were just dogging it. I mean, they weren't even trying to, give it something good. I mean, they were just like, this is crap. And so I stayed away from this movie completely. I didn't go to the theater. I didn't watch it. I was just like, whatever, And then the third one came out, and kind of the same deal. So these movies have been out for several years, the last two. And just the other day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give these last two a try. I've seen all the other Star Wars movies. Might as well, right? And I was like, I'm going to make myself almost like these movies. Which I know is not something you should really do with a movie, but I thought, well, how bad could they be? They're not good. They're not good.
Yeah. The Last Jedi, I went and watched it in the theater. And I was on board for most of the movie. It was really when I left the theater and the emptiness I felt. And I don't think it's because of any twists in the story, because that's what rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, was the twist and the turns and all that stuff. To me, it was just like, this movie was about nothing.
It was boring, is what it was.
It half the movie is this chase through space that amounts into nothing, and Rey's training, I really can't say anything about it too much. It wasn't
nothing,
Luke has apparently turned into a terrible person in the past 40 years or 30 years, however much time's supposed to pass, which that's probably the worst sin of the new trilogy.
Amen to that.
If you have your own actor coming out and saying, this is not Luke Skywalker I'm playing in this movie, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, I knew when it showed Luke at the beginning of the second one, he grabs the lightsaber and he just chucks it. I'm like, Luke would not do that. That is not Luke Skywalker. I don't know who this guy is, but that's not the Luke that I grew up with and everything. So
yeah, and they didn't really do enough to establish why he's like this now. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would take this Luke if I knew what changed him.
Right. If there was,
how did he go from the guy that was going to go to try to risk his life to save his father that he never really knew, just because he's like, that's my father, that's what I should do, and he didn't care if it cost him going to the dark side. He was going to try the best he could.
Right.
Meanwhile, this guy's just like, there's this kid, his name's Kylo, I've got to kill him. Or actually, his name was Ben Solo at the time, I guess. But I got to kill him because he could come to the dark side. That doesn't make sense. That is not the Luke Skywalker. He would try to change him, try to save him from being that way, instead of trying to kill him in his sleep or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that. And I think another big thing it does is it they establish new characters that really don't do anything even in the third movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was all over the Benicio del Toro character. I thought he was pretty cool. And then guess what? He really doesn't contribute to the plot. Yeah. He's just there to do some shenanigans. Yeah, just a random guy.
And then you have Ben, who was a stormtrooper that turned. That was a good idea, you know.
Yeah.
But he ends up not being that much of a character that much, you know. So it's just disappointing. I think disappointing is the word that I use for this trilogy. I mean, it had potential, somewhat, but it just did not fall through. And you had so many characters that you just didn't care about. And that's the thing about Star Wars that I think made the originals so good, is you cared about all these guys. You believed in these people, and I just didn't with this trilogy. And, I mean, you can blame Disney, you can blame J.J. Abrams, whoever you want, but it's just really sad that you know, we're having to crap on Star Wars, you know, because I never thought that would happen.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, especially with the hype and the sort of what we thought could be from this, and it ends up being just a waste of time and lots of money. And I know they were successful, but really, if you're trying to create a legacy, what will the legacy be for this trilogy? Yep. And I guess there are some people out there, the minority, that don't really care, that do not have the same feeling. And I don't want to sound like a boomer fanboy, even though I'm not really a boomer. But it sounds like something a boomer would say, like, "Oh, well, back in my day, Star Wars was great. Yeah. We called it Star Wars, not A New Hope." But I digress. I just think possibly there is a fandom for this group, and to me, I'm not all about the brand. I'm more about the quality of the films. So that's why I really can't get into this new Star Wars stuff. So sue me for it. Well, that's just who I am.
Well, here's the question. The originals were so beloved. Like, did that hurt anything that came after? Like, did that do more of a thing? Because it's like, you're never going to live up to, you know, this classic film. So, I mean, is it anything, if they'd done anything, would it just soured us? I don't know. I you know.
It's hard to say. I mean, I think possibly a great filmmaker with no studio control, got to do what they wanted to, put a lot of love into it. I would hope they could salvage something out of it. I mean, it's possible to make good Star Wars stories. This universe is what you can do that. My best experience is playing this old video game called Knights of the Old Republic. It is the best Star Wars story I've ever experienced outside of the original trilogy. And if they would have made that into a movie, it would have been just awesome. But I think the big thing is that, especially when it went to Disney, they were thinking more about the common denominator, the bottom the dollar signs and all that. And they didn't care as much about making a good story with compelling characters.
Yep. And now I think they've kind of panicked and made all these shows and done all this to try to salvage what they've lost for these three films. Especially, again, the last two. The first one was okay. The first one, I think, you know, I can actually give a pass to. Is it great? No. But I give it a pass, you know. It was the other two, the two that had to come after that I think needed to be a certain level that they weren't. And didn't really, in my opinion, and again, this is my opinion, your opinion, I don't think they reached the level that they should have.
Yeah, and we'll just leave it at that. It's our opinion. We've been rambling for the past 15 minutes about this. Hopefully you didn't get too negative after hearing this. If so, just go find you a punching bag, or better yet, just change your tune. Go put on the old trilogy, listen to some John Williams music, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be all right.
On this next segment of the SuperCaZt, things get strange. Kids on bicycles. parallel dimensions, government experiments, Dungeons and Dragons, egos, playful banter, kids disappearing on the SuperCaZt. Look at Stranger Things. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Listen to Kate Bush.
And welcome back to SuperCaZt Extras. I'm here to talk about a show that I really like, and it's hard for me to really find shows I like nowadays because my time is so precious. I mean, as you know, most shows go on for 10 episodes per season or maybe 24.
Right.
They can be pretty long, they can be lengthy, they can take a big portion of your life. And that's why sometimes I'll just watch the first episode of a show and decide, hey, I can't watch it anymore. I've got other things I need to watch. Sorry, I'm going to put it off. But this show is one that I bought in from day one, from the first time I watched it, and I wanted to binge it. And it's the only show that I can really think of like that other than like Twin Peaks or something, where I can just sit down and just watch episode after episode. In fact, the other night when I was watching this 4th season, I had to just like modify myself. I'm like, okay, you cannot stay up to 4 or 5 in the morning. You got things you got to do tomorrow, so go to sleep. It's 2 already. Go to sleep. So what we're talking about is the Netflix show Stranger Things.
I tell you what, this show it caught fire almost instantly. I think people hooked onto this show, and I remember watching the first season and really, really liking it. The characters are just pretty awesome. There's a lot of good characters. There's some not so good, obviously, but I think all the kids do a really good job. Like, and that's something you don't normally see in a show like this, where all the kids are, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I think the kids would kind of bring you in on that first season. It's the performances, the authenticity. I mean, it's like the kids are acting like kids would in this situation. There's not like some adult word this dialogue and it sounds like a bunch of adults talking as children.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very good writing, very good direction. I think that first season in particular had a mystery that needed to be solved. And it kind of brought you into this world. You got into it, you got invested, and it was really neat to see the dynamics of the characters and how they interact. And you wanted to see if Will could get out of the upside down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you. First season pulled me in. All that nostalgia stuff that people rave about, like where they're like, "Oh, this scene's from E.T."
Yeah.
That really doesn't do that for me. I think the show works pretty well outside of that.
Right.
That was just something that kind of drove me crazy when I first watched it. I was like, everybody's just like freaking out about, oh, there's making reference to Indiana Jones here. And I'm like,
well,
who cares? Yeah.
That's when it came out, so.
So, second season, I think that's as far as you've watched right now?
Yeah, I got through the second season, and I'm actually, as we're recording this, I'm actually starting the third season tonight. So I can hopefully catch up with you, and we can do a deep dive on this show together at some point.
Yeah, the other seasons, I really like them a lot. I know a lot of people didn't like season 3 as much, but me, I liked it a lot just because I watch a lot of 80s movies and I kind of get the vibe they're going for. It's a lot different than the other two because you got a lot more characters doing different things. So I kind of liked it because you have your 80s action movie going on over here. You have your sort of, I guess, I don't know, slasher film going on over here. It's just all over the place. I thought it was pretty good, and I like a lot of the characters they introduced in that one. So it didn't bother me. I didn't like it as much as the others, but I didn't hate it. Like some people, when it came out, they're like, I hate this. Stranger Things sucks now. And I never bought into that too much. I just thought, yeah, they could have done more with this character. They could have done more of that. This was kind of silly, but not going to nitpick it too much. But I'll go ahead and tell you, season 4 is awesome.
That's what I've heard. I've heard that it really picks up in season 4.
It does. It does everything that you liked about the series to that point, and it just makes it better. And what I realized when I was watching it, I really like these characters. I like spending time with them. Yeah. And that was just a fun experience watching that. And it's a phenomenon. It shows you how popular this show is. It's made 2 songs from the 80s. #1 hits in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
We had Running Up the Hill by Kate Bush, which, I mean, I think Kate Bush is one of the best artists ever. So I'm glad that more people are listening to her music from this show, and they definitely use it extensively in this season. They have that, but also in the last episode, they pull out Metallica, Master of Puppets. And that's become a huge hit again. So glad more people are discovering this music, and Spotify's liking it, and the artists really like it because they're getting money. I saw that Kate Bush, she's getting paid like $400,000 a week ever since the seasons came out. So pretty nice.
And what I liked about it is, I don't know if the whole show hinged on her, but I think there was a lot of pressure on Millie Bobby Brown doing this show because, you know, there's a lot of, it doesn't come out and say what's wrong with this girl. You kind of have to figure that out as time goes on, and I think she did a really good job for a role like that. Yeah,
I think that's a big thing about it. It's had a lot of breakout stars. I mean, David Harbour wasn't really much before the show.
Yes.
Winona Ryder was kind of an afterthought. She was a big deal back in 80s and 90s, but who cares about her anymore? Mm-hmm. So it's really cool seeing how it's revived people's careers, and it's just a fun ride, good storytelling, worth your time. So going back to the full circle,
I agree.
Beginning, saying looking for shows that are worth your time, this is one of them.
Yeah, and like I said, once I get through season 4, which is the latest season out, we will most likely do a complete review of this show. So if you guys haven't seen it, go watch it. Otherwise, we're going to spoil the heck out of it.
Definitely.
It's a fresco.
So what?
Look at them. You've ruined us. Does it mean nothing to you?
I thought you liked it.
I think it stinks.
3 hours later.
Well done, Moses. Well done, Moses. This has a greatness to it. If you plastered it deep enough, it may last. We'll come and see it again one day, God willing.
And now for something completely different.
And welcome back again for our final segment of this SuperCaZt Extras. This one I really don't have a cool title for, but the topic is just basically films that the first time we watched them, they didn't just click it for us. I don't know, it might have been something you liked, or maybe you just totally disliked it.
Yeah.
But then after the second or third or fourth viewing, you're just like, oh my gosh, this just blew my socks off. This is the great.
Yeah.
So this happens sometimes when you're dealing with art, just because we as individuals, we change. Sometimes a movie's too challenging the first time we watch it, and we're not into that vibe. Right. And it just clicks later. There's probably multiple answers for this but
definitely.
Let's just talk about our experiences with these films for a good taste of what this is about. So you go ahead, man. What's your first one?
It's a movie in a series that we both really like. That's of course James Bond. And a few years ago, I had seen this probably with you at some point, and it just didn't click with me at the time. But I really liked it the second time I watched it, and that's the movie Diamonds Are Forever. Like, I know I had seen it before, and I just don't remember liking it that much. So I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this movie. And I fell in love with it. I mean, it's weird. It's not the typical Bond movie, and it's, got some interesting characters. But I really like that film, and that was something that kind of surprised me when I was watching it, because it's pretty unique within the Bond franchise, I think. We've got some interesting characters. Obviously, Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wynn. And I don't know, the show, the movie finally grew on me, and I was like, yes, pretty good. Better than I remembered anyway.
That's an interesting one. For me, that one's actually done the opposite effect. I used to like it more back in the day, and now I kind of like it a little bit less. So that's the way that works too.
Yep.
So my first one, this one's probably going to throw you for a loop, because this is one of my favorite movies ever.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever sat down and watched Rushmore, I did not like it that much.
Oh, really?
I remember there was parts of it I liked, such as I remember liking the montages, the music. I liked Bill Murray as Bloom.
Yeah.
And I liked the part at the end where they did the play as pretty much Apocalypse Now on stage, which is just insane thing to throw out there. But I hated Max. I hated Jason Schwartzman's character. He was just so annoying. I hated him the whole way through. I'm like, this is the protagonist. You're supposed to like him. Give it a few months. I rented that movie again. And the second time I watched it, I'm like, this is one of my favorite movies ever. I got into that whole Wes Anderson thing. I think Royal Tenenbaums came out at the same time I watched this one again the second time. And it just clicked for me. And it's a movie that I've bought twice because my first edition wasn't good enough. I had to buy the Criterion edition. So I really like it. I've watched the heck out of it. I can pretty much quote every scene from it. But the first time I sat down and watched it, I didn't really like it.
Yeah. You know, I liked that movie alright the first time I watched it, but I don't think I was ever as big a fan of it as I was, say, like Bottle Rocket. I love that film. I think it's probably my favorite Wes Anderson film, just because I love those guys.
Yeah, more likable characters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Max, he's just not a nice guy.
No.
And some people, that's why they don't like The Life Aquatic. They say that Steve Zissou is not a likable guy. So maybe that's just the Wes Anderson thing.
Could be. I don't know.
What's your second one?
Let's see. There's so many. But you go ahead and do your second one, and I'll follow suit. I'm sure you'll make me think of it.
Man, you're breaking the pattern again.
I know.
All right, so for me, it's another one that a movie I absolutely love. But the first time I watched it, it was just kind of eh. I watched Chinatown for the first time in college. And
you didn't like it the first time?
I remember liking the last scene. But other than that, I remember it was just kind of...
Oh, man.
That was my thoughts about it. I remember liking the corn field scene. That was very memorable. And I remember the last scene. But everything in between was just a blur. And when I rewatched it a few years ago, I guess it was like a couple years ago now, all of a sudden it jumped to the top of my list. I'm like, this is one of my favorite all-time movies. It is a 10 out of 10. I want to go buy this movie right now. I don't know what has changed about me since then, because I obviously had pretty good taste in movies back then, I think. The only thing I can kind of chalk it up to is I was watching too many good movies back then. And maybe I just caught this one on a bad day or something. Maybe I was a little too sleepy. Because I do remember watching it like 8 o'clock in the morning or something. So maybe that was it. Just watching too many movies in a short amount of time. And it just kind of went over my head a little bit.
Alright, so my second movie is a movie that you're a huge fan of. And I've wanted to be a huge fan initially, but it just didn't click for me for a long time. And that was the first Lord of the Rings movie. Fellowship of the Ring. Like, it just, I don't know, it just didn't speak to me initially. And then one day I watched it, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. It was really weird how a movie like that did not speak to me the same as it had before, and now I love the series, so that was something.
I guess I can get that. It's a whole mythology, it's a whole world, and if that's a lot to keep up with, a lot of exposition, and if you miss a little detail there, you might affect how you watch the whole movie.
How about you guys? What movies did you guys maybe not like or not really into at first, and then you gave it a second chance? What's a movie that you gave a second chance and now you just couldn't imagine your life without it? Let us know on Twitter at SuperCaZt with a Z, or on Facebook group, search SuperCaZt with a Z, and let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Definitely. And as always, we enjoy our fans. This is what we do this for. And hopefully you can check out our next episode, in which we will be talking about a pretty recent movie, that is The Green Knight. It's a very old story, been told many times before throughout the centuries, but it got made into a film pretty recently, and let's talk about it next time on the SuperCaZt.
Hey, you very good. See you next time.